Hello, it's Dr. Mike here with a bit of Linux for you. So we're going to be talking about RPM package management. So RPM itself is the Red Hat package management or Red Hat package manager. And it really is used for Red Hat CentOS based systems. And it is sort of the heart and soul of what installs, uninstalls, and updates your software. So first off, let's talk about the packages themselves. So the packages themselves are usually packaged in something called an RPM file, .rpm. And these are usually prefaced with the name of the package, a version, and then release. So you can get some pretty long examples here. And also the architecture. So being is it 64-bit or is it 32-bit, and then .rpm. So you can find these freely available on most sites. So here's the CentOS site, and CentOS has a full, they have full links to all their packages, and this is actually how it's installed. So when you get the DVD ISO file, you usually get the base install here. This is actually a DVD image just on the web. So under the packages you can see here are plenty of console kit, version 041-3 is probably the, look here, this is the release. And architecture is x86 64-bit. So you actually can download these separately and even install them individually. And we'll take a look at that. So now RPM is a base command itself. We'll take a quick peek at the RPM command and what it can be used for. You can also get what's called the source package. So usually the same here, we can see console kit src.rpm. This is actually the source code, so it's really referred to as an uncompiled RPM. You could download this, open this file up, and you can edit the source code. You can make changes to it, modifications, and then recompile it with the RPM command and have your own version of this. This is hence the whole basis of open source. Now you get more than just the source code. RPM will have other install files, supporting files, library files, anything you might need for this specific source. But we're going to talk about that in a second. That actually there are things called, there are requirements or something called dependencies. And dependencies can be a pain. So let's look at the RPM command itself. So I'm here in CentOS, so RPM. You can see there's a lot of options here. RPM itself is pretty straightforward. It's great for querying what you have. So we do have, look at the man page for RPM. We can verify, we can query with a -q, which is very handy. But you can do -i to install, -U to upgrade, freshen, or -e to erase, hence uninstall. Now there's a lot of other stuff you can do with RPM. It is also a database of everything installed on your system. So I just did -QA, which Q all. Show you that again here. RPM-QA. Let me pipe that to less because it's several screens here. We can see all the stuff that is installed on our system. So probably real popular is if I actually pipe it to grep. Let's do for cups. There we go. We have these things, cups 1.4.2 with release version 48. EL6 is an i686 package level. So you can use this to actually query your systems as well as install and update and erase. Now I'm not going to go to how to install and update from RPM because I'm going to show you something else called yum here in a second. Before we head off here, let's do this. Let's do a -QI on cups. So the queue is very powerful. QA, QAll, QI, Q individual package. You notice I put cups, and it found the first one that matched, and actually found the correct package. So here we have cups, the name, the version, the release 488.el6, the install date. You actually can see the host it was built on. Here's the source RPM file. So if you want to, you can go out and retrieve this source RPM file from the correct repository. So here are source packages, src RPM. Size, signature, you can RPM does have signatures in place. You can do signature, key signatures, that way you can get verified RPMs for security. Best part too is you actually have a link to the home page and a description of what the package is. So RPM is very powerful. Very common though to see it used. We'll see here we're actually going to use yum when we actually install, and I'll show you why in a second. But again, you can use RPM to query, display information about a file itself, QIP. So if I download an RPM file, I can actually query the file itself, and it'll interrogate the file and tell me what's inside of it. So query is very powerful, and I'll just see. Here we go. So there's a lot of ways we can query information. You can also query the scripts that are used before and after installation of the package, dependencies and capabilities, list all files in the package. So, and you can check the package integrity. So it'll check the integrity against the source repository. So again, you usually need to install a public key, and then use the information from the repository how to do that. These were held in the etc pki directory. And you can use this again to verify with MD5 the package integrity. Now, installing packages with RPM. Again, normally, of course, first off, you got to be root. No surprise, we don't want anyone to be able to install packages. But RPMs have dependencies. What that means is, for a specific thing to install, it needs to have other packages installed with it. It could be library files, which we're going to talk about that in a separate video. And so it can become a real pain. You try to install one item and it needs 4 others. So you have to go track down those 4 RPM files. So you can see where this becomes very intensive. So the best thing to do is allow something with yum. So here's an example. Someone trying to install so rpm-i to install GNOME games, and they get this failure dependency. It needs libclutter, so is needed by GNOME, and libguli is needed by GNOME games. So you need this long list, and this dependency chain can become, again, real pain. So you have to go out and download those separate files and do a -i on all of them at once. So again, RPM, you can also remove packages with yum, and you can update them. So a quick note here, -uppercase-U to update a newer version. If you actually do the kernel update, you want to do -i to install. You never want to update the kernel. Reason why is update will install a new version of the kernel and maintain the old version. A kernel update is a pretty big deal, and if you want to be able to actually boot into the older version of the kernel, if you boot to the newer version and something ever happens, something doesn't work correctly, you can always go back to the previous kernel. So, and that usually updates the bootloader with that actual kernel information for you. So again, how we manage packages. Normally, you have a package manager in place and a repository. So, best thing about the repository is you can create your own. You can create your own local repositories, and you can have those on site. So hence you can have your own update server, and there you can host out over different methods. HTTP is a common one, FTP, and so on. I use HTTP as a common way to host repositories, as we can see here. So we can use this to create our own update servers for enterprise level commercial level. So that way I can test out updates, and when they're ready I can push them to my own update server and then run the updates on all my servers, and it only pulls from my update server. So very powerful way. And it's using Yum. So let's talk about Yum real quick here. So Yum's the way to go. Let's do a man on Yum. So Yellow Dog Update Modifier, great name. It really is sort of a meta layer over RPM. It uses RPM, but also handles all of the dependencies for you, and also can handle the updates for you. So Yum itself. So if I just run the Yum command, you can see there's a lot of options here. I'm not going to go through all of them definitely, but we'll show you some of the main ones. Repo list, let's start with that. So first off, where does Yum reside? We actually have a yum.conf file. And then we actually have a directory called yum.repos.d. And here you actually put in a list, or you keep repository files. I'll show you. There's always one called local here. So that's the so there's always a local.repo file. So you can have more than this. You can have several .repo files. For example, Google has their own .repo file you can install to actually install Google software, like Chrome, for example. Let's take a look at this file here. Let's see. .repos.d, local.repo. There we go. So you can see this is using an actual base file. So we have a shared directory, release version, which is pulling from the environment variable, local, and then our base search. And updates come from an update directory. So you can have this. You can have several updates here, and I can just actually point to something like this. You can point to this URL. This is a vault here. So you can see here, source RPM, source i386, x86, and so on. And here's the versions of CentOS. So it looks like a 6.5. And here's everything you need. ISOs, updates, extras, and so on. And most of the time you're given guidance when you set up new repositories. You usually don't have to figure out yourself. You can see if it's enabled, yes or no. GPG check, this is our MD5 check we just talked about, and so on. So again, we have a conf file that tells us where our repos are at, and you can download packages with the Yum downloader. So again, the best thing though is dependencies. Yum's going to handle it for us. So let's take a look here. So Yum's got several commands. Search, for example. HTTP. You can see it found several things, and this is checking that repository that's outlined in our local.repo file. If we had other repositories, it would actually go through and check any ones that are enabled. In this case, we have httpd.i686. It's the Apache server. So let's go ahead and actually install that. Yum install httpd. Here we go. As it says, just let's go through the list here with the output. So you can see it's processing the package, it's checking the transactions, and it's looking for dependencies right there. That's what we want. Now, if I wanted to do this with RPM, I would have to download HTTP tools RPM, lib, rutil, lib APR1, APR util adapt, etc, all this stuff. You have to go through and find them and download them, and run all the RPM-I VH on all those. Very time consuming. So Yum is actually recommended the way to update, install, and remove files. So you can see here it's going to install the web server and install these dependencies. Do this yes or no. Again, here's a picture of our install. I say yes. Give it a second. It's installing from the repository. So what Yum is doing there is actually leveraging RPM. It's doing the RPM-I for us. And it's done now. So if I actually do a check config, you can see it's installed. Now right now it's off. Service, HTTPD, status. Let's go and start it. And now I have a running web server. So those 3 simple steps: yum install HTTPD, and then I can actually just 2 steps: yum install HTTPD, and then service HTTP start. I have this installed and start a web server. So a little bit extra stuff there for you. That'll come in handy on the final for sure. So again, Yum is the way to go. Always use Yum as possible. Now you might need to download it. You might actually be presented with an RPM file separately. Hopefully that file does not have dependencies. You can do an RPM-I VH, for example, to install that. But actually you can use Yum to install an actual file itself too. There's also group installs. So as you look at the Yum repositories, for example, there's an entire group of software, let's say, for games. You can grab the entire package group. So, and you can list out groups with group list. Removing is pretty straightforward. There's Yum remove or Yum erase. So let's do that. First off, you need stop. Stop Apache. Let's check its status. It's stopped. Yum erase. Like I typed today. Make sure you want to remove it. Now, you notice it did not remove the dependencies. So that's something to consider. Usually not a big deal. Dependencies are usually library files, but you can force it to remove dependencies that well if you like. So there's options for that. Again, we're not going to go into that here. Look at the man page. You'll find the options for doing that too. Yum list updates and Yum update package. So you can actually update individual packages, or you can list all updates. So Yum is your updater. So Yum's very powerful, but it uses RPM. So RPM is what you need to use to verify stuff. So if I want to get the repo list, you can see here my repo list is listed. Now I have a local repo, and one called updates, CentOS 6.3 and 6.3 updates. So you can get a quick list of all your repos with Yum repo list. So there's a lot of stuff for Yum, a lot of stuff for RPM also. Now I did leave off this. We'll see this in all repositories. A lot of them have their own way to install their own software updates. This is usually over the, of course, the GUI here, and there's also sort of an app store for most things. We'll see that in Ubuntu for sure. So those are just GUI-based tools that have their own repo list per se, if it's a repository based out of user your distribution. So, for example, Ubuntu has an Ubuntu app store, but it also has an updater. Again, it's sort of really a layer above Yum, for example, in this case of CentOS, and apt-get and apt frameworks for the Debian. We'll see there in a little bit. So again, you have a GUI-based stuff to search, install, and manage and update software. You have usually as command line based. Yum is the preferred way, and it is going to leverage RPM. So anyways, we'll leave it there. Hope that's very helpful, and I'll see you later.